The Rose Tattoo by Tennessee Williams. To Frank, in return for Sicily. The Timeless World of a Play. Carson McCullers concludes one of her lyric poems with the line, "Time, the endless idiot, runs screaming round the world." It is this continual rush of time, so violent that it appears to be screaming, that deprives our actual lives of so much dignity and meaning. And it is, perhaps more than anything else, the arrest of time, which has taken place in the completed work of art that gives to certain plays their feelings of depth and significance. In the London notices of Death of a Salesman, a certain notoriously skeptical critic made the remark that Willy Loman was the sort of man that almost any member of the audience would have kicked out of an office had he applied for a job, or detained one for a conversation about his troubles. The remark itself possibly holds some truth, but the implication that Willy Loman is consequently a character with whom we have no reason to concern ourselves in drama reveals a strikingly false conception of what plays are. Contemplation is something that exists outside of time, and so is the tragic sense. Even in the actual world of commerce, there exists in some persons a sensibility to the unfortunate situations of others, a capacity for concern and compassion, surviving from a more tender period of life outside the present whirling wire cage of business activity. Facing Willy Loman across an office desk, meeting his nervous glance and hearing his querulous voice, we would be very likely to glance at our wristwatch and our schedule of other appointments. We would not kick him out of the office, no, but we would certainly ease him out with more expedition than Willie had feebly hoped for. But suppose there had been no wristwatch or office clock, and suppose there had not been the schedule of pressing appointments, and suppose that we were not actually facing Willie across a desk, and facing a person is not the best way to see him. Suppose, in other words, that the meeting with Willy Loman had somehow occurred in a world outside of time. Then I think we would receive him with concern and kindness and even with respect. If the world of a play did not offer us this occasion to view its characters under that special condition of a world without time, then indeed the characters and occurrences of drama would become equally pointless, equally trivial, as corresponding meetings and happenings in life. The classic tragedies of Greece had tremendous nobility. The actors wore great masks, movements were formal, dance-like, and the speeches had an epic quality which doubtless were as removed from the normal conversation of their contemporary society as they seem today. Yet they did not seem false to the Greek audiences. The magnitude of the events and the passions aroused by them did not seem ridiculously out of proportion to common experience. And I wonder if this was not because the Greek audiences knew, instinctively or by training, that the created world of a play is removed from that element which makes people little and their emotions fairly inconsequential. Great sculpture often follows the lines of the human body. Yet the repose of great sculpture suddenly transmutes those human lines to something that has an absoluteness, a purity, a beauty, which would not be possible in a living, mobile form. A play may be violent, full of motion, yet it has that special kind of repose which allows contemplation and produces the climate in which tragic importance is a possible thing, provided that certain modern conditions are met. In actual existence, the moments of love are succeeded by the moments of satiety and sleep. The sincere remark is followed by a cynical distrust. Truth is fragmentary at best. We love and betray each other not in quite the same breath, but in two breaths that occur in fairly close sequence. But the fact that passion occurred in passing, that it then declined into a more familiar sense of indifference, should not be regarded as proof of its inconsequence. And this is the very truth that drama wishes to bring us. Whether or not we admit it to ourselves, we are all haunted by a truly awful sense of impermanence. I have always had a particularly keen sense of this at New York cocktail parties. And perhaps that is why I drink the martinis almost as fast as I can snatch them from the tray. This sense is the febrile thing that hangs in the air. Horror of insincerity, of not meaning, overhangs these affairs like the cloud of cigarette smoke and the hectic chatter. This horror is the only thing, almost, that is left unsaid at such functions. All social functions involving a group of people not intimately known to each other are always under this shadow. They are almost always, in an unconscious way, like that last dinner of the condemned, where steak or turkey, whatever the doomed man wants, is served in his cell as a mockingly cruel reminder of what the great, big, little transitory world had to offer. In a play, time is arrested in the sense of being confined. By a sort of legerdemain, events are made to remain events, rather than being reduced so quickly to mere occurrences. The audience can sit back in a comforting dusk to watch a world which is flooded with light, and which emotion and action have a dimension and dignity that they would likewise have in real existence, if only the shattering intrusion of time could be locked out. About their lives, people ought to remember that when they are finished, everything in them will be contained in a marvelous state of repose, which is the same as that which they unconsciously admired in drama. The rush is temporary. The great and only possible dignity of man lies in his power deliberately to choose certain moral values by which to live as steadfastly as if he too, like a character in a play, were immured against the corrupting rush of time. Snatching the eternal out of the desperately fleeting is the great magic trick of human existence. As far as we know, as far as there exists any kind of empiric evidence, there is no way to beat the game of being against non-being, in which non-being is the predestined victor on realistic levels. Yet plays in the tragic tradition offer us a view of certain moral values in violent juxtaposition. Because we do not participate except as spectators, we can view them clearly within the limits of our emotional equipment. These people on the stage do not return our looks. We do not have to answer their questions nor make any sign of being in company with them. Nor do we have to compete with their virtues nor resist their offenses. All at once, for this reason, we are able to see them. Our hearts are wrung by recognition and pity, so that the dusky shell of the auditorium where we are gathered anonymously together is flooded with an almost liquid warmth of unchecked human sympathies, relieved of self-consciousness, allowed to function. Men pity and love each other more deeply than they permit themselves to know. The moment after the phone has been hung up, the hand reaches for a scratch pad and scrawls a notation. Funeral Tuesday at 5. Church of the Holy Redeemer. Don't forget flowers. And the same hand is only a little shakier than usual as it reaches, some minutes later, for a highball glass that will pour a stupefaction over the kindled nerves. Fear and evasion are the two little beasts that chase each other's tails in the revolving wire cage of our nervous world. They distract us from feeling too much about things. Time rushes toward us with its hospital tray of infinitely varied narcotics, even while it is preparing us for its inevitably fatal operation. So successfully have we disguised from ourselves the intensity of our own feelings, the sensibility of our own hearts, that plays in the tragic tradition have begun to seem untrue. For a couple of hours, we may surrender ourselves to a world of fiercely illuminated values in conflict. But when the stage is covered and the auditorium lighted, almost immediately there is a recoil of disbelief. Well, well, we say as we shuffle back up the aisle, while the play dwindles behind us with the sudden perspective of an early Chihiro painting. By the time we have arrived at Sardes, if not as soon as we pass beneath the marquee, we have convinced ourselves once more that life has as little resemblance to the curiously stirring and meaningful occurrences on the stage as a jingle has to an elegy of Rilke. This modern condition of his theater audience is something that an author must know in advance. The diminishing influence of life's destroyer, time, must be somehow worked into the context of his play. Perhaps it is a certain foolery, a certain distortion toward the grotesque, which will solve the problem for him. Perhaps it is only restraint, putting a mute on the strings that would like to break all bounds. But almost surely, unless he contrives in some way to relate the dimensions of his tragedy to the dimensions of a world in which time is included, he will be left among his magnificent debris on a dark stage, muttering to himself, "Those fools." And if they could hear him above the clatter of tongues, glasses, chinaware, and silver, they would give him this answer: "But you have shown us a world not ravaged by time. We admire your innocence, but we have seen our photographs, past and present. Yesterday evening we passed our first wife on the street. We smiled as we spoke, but we didn't really see her. It's too bad. But we know what is true and not true, and at 3 a.m. your disgrace will be in print." Tennessee Williams. Scenes. Act 1. Scene 1, evening. Scene 2, almost morning the next day. Scene 3, noon of that day. Scene 4, a late spring morning 3 years later. Scene 5, immediately following. Scene 6, 2 hours later that day. Act 2, Scene 1, 2 hours later that day. Act 3, Scene 1, evening of the same day. Scene 2, just before dawn of the next day. Scene 3, morning. Author's production notes. The locale of the play is a village populated mostly by Sicilians somewhere along the Gulf Coast between New Orleans and Mobile. The time is the present. As the curtain rises, we hear a Sicilian folk singer with a guitar. He is singing. At each major division of the play, this song is resumed and it is completed at the final curtain. The first lighting is extremely romantic. We see a frame cottage in a rather poor state of repair, with a palm tree leaning dreamily over one end of it and a flimsy little entrance porch, with spindling pillars, sagging steps, and broken rails at the other end. The setting seems almost tropical, for in addition to the palm tree, there are tall canes with feathery fronds and a fairly thick growth of pampas grass. These are growing on the slope of an embankment along which runs a highway, which is not visible, but the cars passing on it can occasionally be heard. The house has a rear door which cannot be seen. The facing wall of the cottage is either a transparency that lifts for the interior scenes, or is the cutaway to reveal the interior. The romantic first lighting is that of late dusk. The sky is a delicate blue with an opalescent shimmer, more like water than air. Delicate points of light appear and disappear like lights reflected in a twilight harbor. The curtain rises well above the low tin roof of the cottage. We see an inn that is as colorful as a booth at a carnival. There are many religious articles and pictures of ruby and gilt. the brass cage of a gaudy parrot, a large bowl of goldfish, cut-glass decanters and vases, rose-patterned wallpaper, and a rose-colored carpet. Everything is exclamatory in its brightness, like the projection of a woman's heart passionately in love. There is a small shrine against the wall between the rooms, consisting of a prie-dieu and a little statue of the Madonna in a starry blue robe and gold crown. Before this burns always a vigil light in its ruby glass cup. Our purpose is to show these gaudy, childlike mysteries with sentiment and humor in equal measure, without ridicule and with respect for the religious yearnings they symbolize. An outdoor sign indicates that Serafina, whose home the cottage is, does sewing. The interior furnishings give evidence of this vocation. The most salient feature is a collection of dressmakers' dummies. There are at least 7 of these life-size mannequins in various shapes and attitudes. They will have to be made especially for the play, as their purpose is not realistic. They have pliable joints so that their positions can be changed. Their arms terminate at the wrist. In all their attitudes there is an air of drama, somewhat like the poses of declamatory actresses of the old school. Principal among them are a widow and a bride who face each other in violent attitudes, as though having a shrill argument in the parlor. The widow's costume is complete from black-veiled hat to black slippers. The bride's featureless head wears a chaplet of orange blossoms from which is depended a flowing veil of white marquisette, and her net gown is trimmed in white satin, lustrous, immaculate. Most of the dummies and sewing equipment are confined to the dining room, which is also Serafina's workroom. In that room, there is a tall cupboard on top of which are several dusty bottles of imported Sicilian spumante. O slinger, crack the nut of my eye. My heart twittered with joy under the splendor of the quicklime. The bird sings, O senectus. The streams are in their beds like the cries of women, and this world has more beauty than a ram's skin painted red. St. John Perse, Anabasis, T.S. Eliot translation. Act 1. It is the hour that the Italians call prima sera, the beginning of dusk. Between the house and the palm tree burns the female star with an almost emerald luster. The mothers of the neighborhood are beginning to call their children home to supper, in voices near and distant, urgent and tender, like the variable notes of wind and water. There are 3 children, Bruno, Salvatore, and Vivi, ranged in front of the house, one with a red paper kite, one with a hoop, and the little girl with a doll dressed as a clown. They are in attitudes of momentary repose, all looking up at something, a bird or a plane passing over, as the mothers' voices call them. Bruno. The white flags are flying at the Coast Guard station. Salvatore. That means fair weather. Vivi. I love fair weather. Giuseppina. Vivi, vieni mangiare. Peppina. Salvatore, come home. Violetta. Bruno, come home to supper. The calls are repeated tenderly, musically. The interior of the house begins to be visible. Serafina del Rose is seen on the parlor sofa waiting for her husband Rosario's return. Between the curtains is a table set lovingly for supper. There is wine in a silver ice bucket and a great bowl of roses. Serafina looks like a plump little Italian opera singer in the role of Madame Butterfly. Her black hair is done in a high pompadour that glitters like a wet coal. A rose is held in place by glittering jet hairpins. Her voluptuous figure is sheathed in a pale rose silk. On her feet are dainty slippers with glittering buckles and French heels. It is apparent from the way she sits with such plump dignity that she is wearing a tight girdle. She sits very erect, in an attitude of forced composure, her ankles daintily crossed and her plump little hands holding a yellow paper fan on which is painted a rose. Jewels gleam on her fingers, her wrists and her ears, and about her throat. Expectancy shines in her eyes. For a few moments, she seems to be posing for a picture. Rosa del Rose appears at the side of the house near the palm tree. Rosa, the daughter of the house, is a young girl of 12. She is pretty and vivacious, and has about her a particular intensity in every gesture. Serafina. Rosa, where are you? Rosa. Here, Mama. Serafina. What are you doing, Cara? Rosa. I've caught 12 lightning bugs. The cracked voice of Assunta is heard approaching. Serafina. I hear Assunta. Assunta. Assunta appears and goes into the house, Rosa following her in. Assunta is an old woman in a gray shawl bearing a basket of herbs, for she is a battucciere, a woman who practices a simple sort of medicine. As she enters, the children scatter. Assunta. Vengo, vengo. Buonasera, buonasera. There's something wild in the air. No wind, but everything's moving. Serafina. I don't see nothing moving, and neither do you. Assunta. Nothing is moving, so you can see it moving, but everything is moving, and I can hear the star noises. Hear them? Hear the star noises? Serafina. Nah, them ain't the star noises. They're termites eating the house up. What are you peddling, old woman, in those little white bags? Assunta. Powder. Wonderful powder. You drop a pinch of it in your husband's coffee. Serafina. What is it good for? Assunta. What is a husband good for? I'm the dry blood of a goat. Serafina. Davvero. Assunta. Wonderful stuff. But be sure you put it in his coffee at supper, not in his breakfast coffee. Serafina. My husband don't need no powder. Assunta. Excuse me, Baronessa. Maybe he needs the opposite kind of powder. I got that too. Serafina. No kind of powder at all, old woman. She lifts her head with a proud smile. Outside, the sound of a truck is heard approaching up on the highway. Rosa, joyfully. Papa's truck. They stand listening for a moment, but the truck goes by without stopping. Serafina to Assunta. That wasn't him. It wasn't no 10-ton truck. It didn't rattle the shutters. Assunta, undo a couple of the hooks. The dress is tight on me. Assunta. Is it true what I told you? Serafina. Yes, it is true, but nobody needed to tell me. Assunta, I'll tell you something, which maybe you won't believe. Assunta. It is impossible to tell me anything that I don't believe. Serafina. Va bene. Senti, Assunta. I knew that I had conceived on the very night of conception. There is a phrase of music as she says this. Assunta. Ah? Serafina. Senti. That night I woke up with a burning pain on me, here, on my left breast. A pain like a needle. Quick, hot little stitches. I turned on the light. I uncovered my breast. On it, I saw the rose tattoo of my husband. Assunta. Rosario's tattoo? Serafina. On me. On my breast, his tattoo. And when I saw it, I knew that I had conceived. Serafina throws her head back, smiling proudly, and opens her paper fan. Assunta stares at her gravely, then rises and hands her basket to Serafina. Assunta. Ecco! You sell the powders. She starts toward the door. Serafina. You don't believe that I saw it? Assunta, stopping. Did Rosario see it? Serafina. I screamed, but when he woke up, it was gone. It only lasted a moment, but I did see it, and I did know, when I seen it, that I had conceived that in my body another rose was growing. Assunta. Did he believe that you saw it? Serafina. No. He laughed. He laughed, and I cried. Assunta. And he took you into his arms, and you stopped crying. Serafina. Si. Assunta. Serafina, for you everything has got to be different. A sign, a miracle, a wonder of some kind. You speak to Our Lady. You say that she answers your questions. She nods or shakes her head at you. Look, Serafina, underneath Our Lady you have a candle. The wind through the shutters makes the candle flicker. The shadows move. Our Lady seems to be nodding. Serafina. She gives me signs. Assunta. Only to you? Because you are more important? The wife of a baron? Serafina. In Sicily, they called his uncle a baron, but in Sicily, everybody's a baron that owns a piece of land and a separate house for the goats. Serafina. They said to his uncle, Voscenza, and they kissed their hands to him. She kisses the back of her hand repeatedly with vehemence. Assunta. His uncle in Sicily, see. But here, what's he do? Drives a truck of bananas. Serafina, blurting out. No, not bananas. Assunta. Not bananas? Serafina. Stai zitta. She makes a warning gesture. No, vieni qui, Assunta. She beckons her mysteriously. Assunta approaches. Assunta. Cosa dici? Serafina. On top of the truck is bananas, but underneath, something else. Assunta. Che altra cosa? Serafina. Whatever it is that the brothers Romano want hauled out of the state, he hauls it for them underneath the bananas. She nods her head importantly. And money. He gets so much it spills from his pockets. Soon I don't have to make dresses. Assunta, turning away. Soon I think you will have to make a black veil. Serafina. Tonight is the last time he does it. Tomorrow he quits hauling stuff for the brothers Romano. He pays for the 10-ton truck and works for himself. We live with dignity in America then. Own truck, own house. And in the house will be everything electric. Stove, deep freeze, tutto. But tonight, stay with me. I can't swallow my heart. Not till I hear the truck in front of the house and his key in the lock of the door. When I call him, and him shouting back, Si, sono qui? In his hair, Assunta, he has oil of roses. And when I wake up at night, the air, the dark rooms, full of roses. Each time is the first time with him. Time doesn't pass. Assunta picks up a small clock on the cupboard and holds it to her ear. Assunta. Tick, 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 tick. You say the clock is a liar. Serafina. No, the clock is a fool. I don't listen to it. My clock is my heart, and my heart don't say tick, tick. It says love, love. And now I have two hearts in me, both of them saying love, love. A truck is heard approaching, then passes. Serafina drops her fan. Assunta opens a bottle of spumante with a loud pop. Serafina cries out. Assunta. Stay tranquilla, calmati. She pours her a glass of wine. Drink this wine, and before the glass is empty, he'll be in your arms. Serafina. I can't. Swallow my heart. Assunta. A woman must not have a heart that is too big to swallow. She crosses to the door. Serafina. Stay with me. Assunta. I have to visit a woman who drank rat poison because of a heart too big for her to swallow. Assunta leaves. Serafina returns indolently to the sofa. She lifts her hands to her great swelling breasts and murmurs aloud. Serafina. Oh, it's so wonderful having two lives in the body. Not one, but two. Her hands slide down to her belly luxuriously. I am heavy with life. I am big, big, big with life. She picks up a bowl of roses and goes into the back room. Estelle Hohengarten appears in the front of the house. She is a thin blonde woman in a dress of Egyptian design, and her blonde hair has an unnatural gloss in the clear greenish dusk. Rosa appears from behind the house, calling out, Rosa, 20 lightning bugs, Mama. Estelle, little girl, little girl. Rosa, resentfully, are you talking to me? There is a pause. Estelle, come here. She looks Rosa over curiously. You're a twig off the old rose bush. Is the lady that does the sewing in the house? Rosa, Mama's at home. Estelle, I'd like to see her. Rosa, Mama? Serafina, Dimi? Rosa, there's a lady here to see you. There's a lady to see you. Serafina, oh, tell her to wait in the parlor. Estelle enters and stares curiously about. She picks up a small framed picture on the cupboard. She is looking at it as Serafina enters with a bowl of roses. Serafina speaks sharply. That is my husband's picture. Estella. Oh, I thought it was Valentino with a mustache. Serafina, putting the bowl down on the table. You want something? Estelle. Yes, I heard you do sewing. Serafina. Yes, I do sewing. Estelle. How fast can you make a shirt for me? Serafina. That all depends. She takes the picture from Estelle and puts it back on the cupboard. Estelle. I got the piece of silk with me. I want it made into a shirt for a man I'm in love with. Tomorrow's the anniversary of the day we met. She unwraps a piece of rose-colored silk, which she holds up like a banner. Serafina, involuntarily, Que bella stoffa! Oh, that would be wonderful stuff for a lady's blouse or for a pair of pajamas. Estelle, I want a man's shirt made with it. Serafina, silk of this color for a shirt for a man? Estelle, this man is wild, like a gypsy. Serafina, a woman should not encourage a man to be wild. Estelle, a man that's wild is hard for a woman to hold, huh? But if he was tame, would the woman want to hold him? Huh? Serafina, I am a married woman in business. I don't know nothing about wild men and wild women, and I don't have much time. So, Estelle, I'll pay you twice what you ask me. Outside there is the sound of the goat bleating and the jingle of the harness, then the crash of wood splintering. Rosa, suddenly appearing at the door. Mama, the black goat is loose. She runs down the steps and stands watching the goat. Serafina crosses to the door. The strega, in the distance. Yeah, Billy. Yeah, Billy. Estelle. I'll pay you 3 times the price that you asked me for it. Serafina shouting. Watch the goat. Don't let him get into our yard. Don't let him get in our yard. To Estelle. If I ask you $5? Estelle, I will pay you 15. Make it 20. Money is not the object, but it's got to be ready tomorrow. Serafina, tomorrow? Estelle, $25. Serafina nods slowly with a stunned look. Estelle smiles. I've got the measurements with me. Serafina, pin the measurements and your name on the silk and the shirt will be ready tomorrow. Estelle, my name is Estelle Hohengarten. A little boy races excitedly into the yard. The boy, Rosa, the black goat's in your yard. Rosa calling, Mama, the goat's in the yard. Serafina, furiously forgetting her visitor. Il becco della strega, scusi. She runs out onto the porch. Catch him before he gets at the vines. Rosa gleefully. The strega runs into the yard. She has a mop of wild gray hair and is holding her black skirts up from her bare hairy legs. The sound of the goat's bleating and the jingling of his harness is heard in the windy blue dusk. Serafina descends the porch steps. The high-heeled slippers, the tight silk shirt, and the dignity of a baronessa make the descent a little gingerly. Arrived in the yard, she directs the goat chase imperiously with her yellow paper fan, pointing this way and that and exclaiming in Italian. She fans herself rapidly and crosses back of the house. The goat evidently makes a sudden charge. Screaming, Serafina rushes to the front of the house, all out of breath, the glittering pompadour beginning to tumble down over her forehead. Serafina, Rosa, you go in the house, don't look at the strega. Alone in the parlor, Estelle takes the picture of Rosario. Impetuously, she thrusts it into her purse and runs from the house, just as Serafina returns to the front yard. Rosa, refusing to move. Why do you call her a witch? Serafina seizes her daughter's arm and propels her into the house. Serafina. She has a white eye, and every finger is crooked. She pulls Rosa's arm. Rosa. She has a cataract, Mama, and her fingers are crooked because she has rheumatism. Serafina. Malocchio. The evil eye. That's what she's got. And her fingers are crooked because she shook hands with the devil. Go in the house and wash your face with salt water and throw the salt water away. Go in, quick. She's coming. The boy utters a cry of triumph. Serafina crosses abruptly to the porch. At the same moment, the boy runs triumphantly around the house, leading the captured goat by its bell harness. It is a middle-sized black goat with great yellow eyes. The strega runs behind with a broken rope. As the grotesque little procession runs before her, the strega, the goat, and the children, Serafina cries out shrilly. She crouches over and covers her face. The strega looks back at her with a derisive cackle. Serafina. Malocchio, Malocchio. Shielding her face with one hand, Serafina makes the sign of the horns with the other to ward off the evil eye. And the scene dims out. Scene 2. It is just before dawn the next day. Father de Leo, a priest, and several black-shawled women, including Assunta, are standing outside the house. The interior of the house is very dim. Giuseppina. There is a light in the house. Peppina. I hear the sewing machine. Violetta. There's Serafina. She's working. She's holding up a piece of rose-colored silk. Assunta. She hears our voices. Violetta. She's dropped the silk to the floor and she's Giuseppina, holding her throat. I think she... Peppina. Who's going to tell her? Violetta. Father de Leo will tell her. Father de Leo. I think a woman should tell her. I think Assunta must tell her that Rosario is dead. Assunta. It will not be necessary to tell her. She will know when she sees us. It grows lighter inside the house. Serafina is standing in a frozen attitude, with her hand clutching her throat and her eyes staring fearfully toward the sound of voices. Assunta. I think she already knows what we have come to tell her. Father de Leo. Andiamo, signore. We must go to the door. They climb the porch steps. Assunta opens the door. Serafina, gasping. Don't speak. She retreats from the group, stumbling blindly backwards among the dressmaker's dummies. With a gasp, she turns and runs out the back door. In a few moments, we see her staggering about outside near the palm tree. She comes down in front of the house and stares blindly off into the distance. Serafina wildly, don't speak. The voices of the women begin keening in the house. Assunta comes out and approaches. approaches Seraphina with her arms extended. Seraphina slumps to her knees, whispering hoarsely, "Don't speak." Assunta envelops her in the gray shawl of pity as the scene dims out. Scene 3. It is noon of the same day. Assunta is removing a funeral wreath on the door of the house. A doctor and Father DeLeo are on the porch. The doctor. She's lost the baby. Assunta utters a low moan of pity and crosses herself. Seraphina's a very strong woman, and that won't kill her, but she is trying not to breathe. She's got to be watched and not allowed out of the bed. He removes a hypodermic and a small package from his bag and hands them to Assunta. This is morphia. In the arm with the needle, she screams or struggles to get up again. Assunta. Capisco. Father DeLeo. One thing I want to make plain. The body of Rosario must not be burned. The doctor. Have you seen the body of Rosario? Father DeLeo. Yes, I have seen his body. The doctor. Wouldn't you say it was burned? Father DeLeo. Of course the body was burned. When he was shot at the wheel of the truck, it crashed and caught fire. But deliberate cremation is not the same thing. It's an abomination in the sight of God. The doctor. Abominations are something I don't know about. Father DeLeo. The church has set down certain laws. The doctor. But the instructions of a widow have to be carried out. Father. Don't you know why she wants the body cremated? So she can keep the ashes here in the house. The doctor. Well, why not if that's any comfort to her? Father DeLeo. Pagan idolatry is what I call it. The doctor. Father DeLeo, you love your people, but you don't understand them. They find God in each other. And when they lose each other, they lose God and they're lost. And it's hard to help them. Who is that woman? Estelle Hohengarten has appeared before the house. She is black-veiled and bearing a bouquet of roses. Estelle. I'm Estelle Hohengarten. Instantly, there is a great hubbub in the house. The women mourners flock out to the porch, whispering and gesticulating excitedly. Father DeLeo. What have you come here for? Estelle. To say goodbye to the body? Father DeLeo. The casket is closed. The body cannot be seen. And you must never come here. The widow knows nothing about you, nothing at all. Giuseppina. We know about you. Peppina. Va via. Sporcaciona. Violetta. Puttana. Mariella. Assassina. Teresa. You sent him to the Romanos. Father DeLeo. Shh. Suddenly the women swarm down the steps like a cloud of attacking birds, all crying out in Sicilian. Estelle crouches and bows her head defensively before their savage assault. The bouquet of roses is snatched from her black-gloved hands, and she is flailed with them about the head and shoulders. The thorns catch her veil and tear it away from her head. She covers her white, sobbing face with her hands. Father DeLeo. Ferme, ferme. Signora ferme vi nel nom di Dio. Have a little respect. The women fall back from Estelle, who huddles weeping on the walk. Estelle. See him. See him. Just see him. Father DeLeo. The body is crushed and burned. Nobody can see it. Now go away and don't ever come here again, Estelle Hohengarten. The women in both language wildly. Va via, go away. Rosa comes around the house. Estelle turns and retreats. One of the mourners spits and kicks at the tangled veil and roses. Father DeLeo leaves. The others return inside except Rosa. After a few moments, the child goes over to the roses. She picks them up and carefully untangles the veil from the thorns. She sits on the sagging steps and puts the black veil over her head. Then, for the first time, she begins to weep, wildly, histrionically. The little boy appears and gazes at her, momentarily impressed by her performance. Then he picks up a rubber ball and begins to bounce it. Rosa is outraged. She jumps up, tears off the veil, and runs to the little boy, giving him a sound smack and snatching the ball away from him. Rosa, go home. My papa is dead. The scene dims out as the music is heard again. Scene 4. A June day, 3 years later. It is morning and the light is bright. A group of local mothers are storming Serafina's house, indignant over her delay in delivering the graduation dresses for their daughters. Most of the women are chattering continually in Sicilian, racing about the house and banging the doors and shutters. The scene moves swiftly and violently until the moment when Rosa finally comes out in her graduation dress. Giuseppina. Serafina del Rose. Peppina. Maybe if you call her Baronessa, she will answer the door. With a mocking laugh. Call her Baronessa and kiss your hand to her when she opens the door. Giuseppina, tauntingly. Baronessa! She kisses her hand toward the door. Violetta. When did she promise your dress? Peppina. All week, she say. Domani, domani, domani. But yesterday I told her. Violetta. Yeah? Peppina. Oh yeah. I says to her, Serafina, domani's the high school graduation. I got to try the dress on my daughter today. Domani, she says. Sicuro, sicuro, sicuro. So I start to go away. Then I hear a voice call, Signora, Signora. So I turn around and I see Serafina's daughter at the window. Violetta. Rosa? Peppina. Yeah, Rosa. And you know how? Violetta. How? Peppina. Naked. Nuda, nuda. She crosses herself and repeats a prayer. In nominis Padre, et Filio, et Spiritus Sancti. Ah. Violetta. What did she do? Peppina. Do? She say, Signora, please. You call this numero and ask for Jack and tell Jack my clothes are a lockup, so I can't get out from the house. Then Serafina comes, she grab the girl by the hair and she pull her away from the window and she slammed the shutters right in my face. Giuseppina. What's the matter, the daughter? Violetta. Who is this boy? Where did she meet him? Peppina. Boy. What boy? He's a sailor. At the word sailor, the women say, ah. She met him at the high school dance and somebody tells Serafina. That's why she locked up the girl's clothes so she can't leave the house. She can't even go to the high school to take the examinations. Imagine. Violetta. Peppina, this time you go to the door, yeah? Peppina. Oh yeah, I go. Now I'm getting nervous. The women all crowd to the door. Serafina. Violetta. Louder, louder. Peppina. Apri la porta. Come on, come on. The women together. Yeah. La porta. Come on. Hurry up. Open up. Giuseppina. I go get at the police. Violetta. What's the matter? You want more trouble? Giuseppina. Listen. I pay in advance $5 and get no dress. Now what's she wear, my daughter, to graduate in? A couple of towels and a rose in the hair? There is a noise inside. A shout and running footsteps. The women. Something is going on in the house. I hear someone, don't I? Don't you? A scream and running footsteps are heard. The front door opens and Serafina staggers out onto the porch. She is wearing a soiled pink slip and her hair is wild. Serafina. Aiuto, aiuto. She plunges back into the house. Miss York, a spinsterish high school teacher, walks quickly up to the house. The Sicilian woman, now all chattering at once like a cloud of birds, sweep about her as she approaches. Miss York. You ladies know I don't understand Italian, so please. She goes directly into the house. There are more outcries inside. The Strega comes and stands at the edge of the yard, cackling derisively. The Strega, calling back to someone. The wops are at it again. She got the daughter locked up naked in there all week. Ho, ho, ho. She locked up all week naked, shouting out the window, tell people to call a number and give a message to Jack. Ho, ho, ho. I guess she's in trouble already and only 15. Ain't civilized, these Sicilians. In the old country, they live in caves in the hills, and the country's run by bandits. Ho, ho, ho. More of them coming over on the boats all the time. The door is thrown open again, and Serafina reappears on the porch. She is acting wildly, as if demented. Serafina, gasping in a hoarse whisper. She cut her wrist. My daughter, she cut her wrist. She runs out into the yard. Ai, aiutatimi, call the dottore. Assunta rushes up to Serafina and supports her as she is about to fall to her knees in the yard. Get the knife away from her. Get the knife, please. Get the knife away from her. She cut her wrist with Madonna mia. Assunta. Smetiglia, Serafina. Miss York, coming out of the back room. Mrs. Della Rose, your daughter has not cut her wrist. Now, come back into the house. Serafina, panting. Che dice, che cosa dice? Miss York, your daughter's all right. Come back into the house. And you ladies, please go away. Assunta. Vieni, Serafina. Andiamo a casa. She supports the heavy, sagging bulk of Serafina to the steps. As they climb the steps, one of the Sicilian mothers advances from the whispering group. Giuseppina, boldly. Serafina, we don't go away until we get our dresses. Peppina, the graduation begins, and the girls ain't dressed. Serafina's reply to this ill-timed request is a long animal howl of misery as she is supported into the house. Miss York follows and firmly closes the door upon the women, who then go round the back of the house. The interior of the house is lighted up. Miss York to Serafina. No, she's not bleeding. Rosa, come here and show your mother that you are not bleeding to death. Rosa appears silently and sullenly between the curtains that separate the two rooms. She has a small white handkerchief tied around one wrist. Serafina points at the wrist and cries out, Ai! Miss York, severely. Now stop that, Mrs. Della Rose. Serafina rushes to Rosa, who thrusts her roughly away. Rosa. Taschiam mister, Mama. I'm so ashamed I could die. This is the way she goes around all the time. She hasn't put on clothes since my father was killed. For 3 years she sits at the sewing machine and never puts a dress on or goes out of the house. And now she has locked my clothes up so I can't go out. She wants me to be like her. A freak of the neighborhood the way she is. Next time I won't cut my wrist but my throat. I don't want to live locked up with a bottle of ashes. She points to the shrine. Assunta. Figlia, non devi fare le cose. Miss York. Mrs. Della Rose, please give me the key to the closet so that your daughter can dress for the graduation. Serafina, surrendering the key. Ecco la chiave. Rosa snatches the key and runs back through the curtains. Miss York. Now why did you lock her clothes up, Mrs. Della Rose? Serafina. The wrist is still bleeding. Miss York. No, the wrist is not bleeding. It's just a skin cut, a scratch. But the child is exhausted from all this excitement and hasn't eaten a thing in 2 or 3 days. Rosa, running into the dining room. 4 days. I only asked her one favor, not to let me go out, but to let Jack come to the house so she could meet him. And she locked my clothes up. Miss York. Your daughter missed her final examinations at the high school, but her grades have been so good that she will be allowed to graduate with her class and take examinations later. You understand me, Mrs. Della Rose? Rosa goes into the back of the house. Serafina standing at the curtains. See the way she looks? I've got a wild thing in the house and her wrist is still bleeding. Miss York. Let's not have any more outbursts of emotion. Serafina. Outbursts of... You make me sick. Sick. Sick at my stomach you make me. Your school, you make all this trouble. You give her this dance where she gets mixed up with a sailor. Miss York. You were talking about the Hunter girls' brother, a sailor named Jack who attended the dance with his sister? Serafina. Attended with sister. Attended with sister. My daughter, she's nobody's sister. Rosa comes out of the back room. She is radiantly beautiful in her graduation gown. Rosa. Don't listen to her. Don't pay any attention to her, Miss York. I'm ready to go to the high school. Serafina, stunned by her daughter's beauty and speaking with a wheedling tone and gestures as she crouches a little. Oh, tesoro, tesoro, vieni qua, Rosa cara. Come here and kiss Mama 1 minute. Don't go like that now. Rosa, lasciamo estar. She rushes out on the porch. Serafina gazes after her with arms slowly drooping from their imploring gesture and jaw dropping open in a look of almost comic desolation. Serafina. O solo te in questo mondo. Miss York. Now, Mrs. Della Rose, no more excitement, please. Serafina, suddenly plunging after them in a burst of fury. Senti, per favor. Rosa, don't you dare come out on the street like that, Mama. She crouches and covers her face in shame as Serafina heedlessly plunges out into the front yard in her shocking dishevel, making wild gestures. Serafina, you give this dance where she gets mixed up with a sailor. What do you think you want to do at this high school? In weeping despair, Rosa runs to the porch. How high is this high school? Listen, how high is this high school? Look, I will show you. It's high as that horse's dirt out there in the street. Serafina points violently out in front of the house. See, sta fetentissima scuola maledetta. Rosa cries out and rushes over to the palm tree, leaning against it with tears of mortification. Miss York. Mrs. Delrose, you are talking and behaving extremely badly. I don't understand how a woman that acts like you could have such a sweet and refined young girl for a daughter. You don't deserve it. Really. She crosses to the palm tree. Serafina. Oh, you want me to talk refined to you, do you? Then do me one thing. Stop ruining the girls at the high school. As Serafina paces about, she swings her hips in the exaggeratedly belligerent style of a parading matador. Assunta. Piantala, Serafina. Andiamo a casa. Serafina. No, I ain't through talking to this here teacher. Assunta. Serafina, look at yourself. You're not dressed. Serafina. I'm dressed okay. I'm not naked. She glares savagely at the teacher by the palm tree. The Sicilian mothers return to the front yard. Assunta. Serafina, cara. Andiamo a casa adesso. Basta. Serafina. Aspetta. Rosa. I'm so ashamed I could die. I'm so ashamed. Oh, you don't know, Miss York, the way that we live. She never puts on a dress. She stays all the time in that dirty old pink slip and talks to my father's ashes like he was living. Serafina. Teacher, senti. What do you think you want to do at this high school? Sentite. Per favore. You give this dance. What kind of a spring dance is it? Answer this question, please, for me. What kind of a spring dance is it? She meet this boy there who don't even go to no high school. What kind of a boy? Guardate. A sailor that wears a gold earring. The kind of a boy is the kind of a boy she meets there. That kind of a boy is the kind of boy she meets there. That's why I lock her clothes up so she can't go back to the high school. Suddenly to Asunta, she cut her wrist. It's still bleeding. Rosa, Mama, wait, it's still bleeding. She strikes her forehead 3 times with her fist. Rosa, Mama, you look disgusting. She rushes away. Miss York rushes after her. Seraphina shades her eyes with one hand to watch them departing down the street in the brilliant spring light. Seraphina, did you hear what my daughter said to me? You look disgusting, she calls me. Asunta, now, Seraphina, we must go in the house. She leads her gently to the porch of the little house. Seraphina, proudly. How pretty she look, my daughter, in the white dress, like a bride. To all, excuse me, please, go away, get out of my yard. Josephina, taking the bull by the horns. No, we ain't going to go without the dresses. Asunta, give the lady the dresses so the girls can get dressed for the graduation. Seraphina, that one there paid for the goods. I charge for the work. Josephina, Ecco, I got the money. The women, we got the money. Seraphina, the names are pinned on the dresses. Go in and get them. She turns to Asunta. Did you hear what my daughter called me? She called me disgusting. Seraphina enters the house, slamming the door. After a moment, the mothers come out, cradling the white wooled dresses tenderly in their arms, murmuring, Carino and bellissimo. As they disappear, the inside light is brought up, and we see Seraphina standing before a glazed mirror, looking at herself and repeating the daughter's word. Seraphina, disgusting. The music is briefly resumed to mark a division.